Hola. Here we are. What's up, Mr. Matt? We're live.
Hey, how are you? Another day. Tuesday, Wednesday? What is it? Wednesday.
Today's Wednesday. Today's Wednesday, and we have a cyber breach happening as we speak.
Yep. Yeah, but this time, we're letting the team handle it. So that's kind of the goal for any business owner, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So I thought today's topic is kind of interesting because it applies to every business out there, and well, at least it should. And what we're going to talk about are the things that are most important to insurance companies when it comes to cybersecurity insurance. To a cybersecurity policy, making sure that you have all the most important things in place. And yes, they send out a questionnaire, and yes, you have to fill it out. But the key here is there's some basic standards that you need to follow, and so that's what we're going to give you. And you should check with your whoever's doing your cybersecurity to make sure that you actually are in compliance with your policy. And if you don't have a policy, you should get one. So that's a separate conversation.
Right.
So that's what we're going to talk about today. Matt, I know you have the list.
Yep.
So what's the first thing that I'm not sure if it's the most important thing, but what's the first thing we're going to cover?
It's not necessarily in order. It's just 6 things that you should think about that for your cyber plan. One of the first ones we say is, have a robust security framework. And that doesn't mean that you have to go out and, find the most crazy framework and follow it, but follow something like NIST or CIS, to make sure that you're, using basic controls and risk assessments and response plans, and you have a plan for when you're for your cybersecurity and for your network and for your people, and it's very kind of encompassing for you.
And it's interesting because anybody that watches this is like, well, how do I know if I have a good security framework? And I guess it depends on the size of your business. Typically, the larger companies have more maybe internal people, but even when you maybe a larger company with full-time people that oversee your cybersecurity, it doesn't really mean that you have the right framework in place.
Right.
And that's really what the message is here.
And that kind of goes back to what we talked about last week, is if you can do anything in January, get a cyber assessment. So if you're even following a plan, 2, how far out of the plan you are, and 3, what you need to fix to stay in.
Yeah, here, we'll give a shameless plug. So here's our cybersecurity assessment. You can take it for free. It gives you really good information, but one of the most important things is, so if you're a large company, we mentioned it, but if you're a smaller company where you don't have somebody in-house, ask either your IT company or whoever in your company is overseeing security, what they're doing. What are they actually doing? Because at the end of the day, just because somebody says they're doing it doesn't mean they're doing it. So, or that they're actually doing it right, because things are changing quickly.
It kind of goes back to that principle of, if you don't know, you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. So,
It's true. And that's the thing. The real risk here is, if you don't know the answer to this,
you're already behind.
You need to find out the answer, because you're at risk. If you don't know the answer, you're at risk. You're at risk anyway, but your risk is greater because you don't know the answer to the question.
Right.
So you definitely want to have a framework in place. It could be a matter of perspective what the word robust means, right? But there are some very basic things that I'm not sure, I don't recall what you have on the rest of the list, but you right now, and Matt and I were just talking about this before we hit the button to go live. Let me just pull this back up. But we were just reading something over, and a lot of insurance companies are really focused on implementing privileged access management, which the acronym is PAM. It's like a pretty basic concept, and it's not anything new, but
on forever.
The fact that somebody can get into your company and sorry, I got distracted. The breach, we have stuff popping up on my screen. People are talking. The fact that somebody can get into your company and potentially traverse the network and move around as an administrator relatively easily, it's a huge risk. So if you don't know who has what access and that's not being controlled, you really have a pretty weak security posture. And it actually talks about the underlying culture you have. If you don't know who has what security access, and you don't have things prioritized where everybody has the least privilege possible, and you kind of work backwards from there, you're really in trouble, because we see all the time. People have breaches. They get somebody's account, and that person, for whatever reason, was a network admin or had admin access to all kinds of stuff. And next thing you know, you're screwed. So a lot of insurance companies are really focusing on PAM right now. PAM.
They are. And We actually recently went to a company. They had 19 people work for the company. They had 18 domain admins. So every single person that worked in that company was a domain administrator. So if anybody's credentials would have gotten leaked, and they were also all global administrators in MS365.
Yes, and so you do find it in smaller companies, but it's not like you're not going to find it in a Fortune 500 company. I mean, there's so many people.
We've gone to like
access, and you have to have a process in place when somebody comes and goes, like hiring and firing. But you also need to have standards in place for based on what their role is. You should easily fit right into a certain group, and that group has certain access.
Right.
But the key is you got to take ownership and accountability, and don't just believe that because somebody says we have a good security framework that you do. Get an IT assessment. This is in every IT assessment, a cyber assessment that we do. You're always looking at who has what access, what privileges, right?
Right. Yeah, we've worked with big companies where they have everyone, all the managers are admins and stuff too, and we've had to work with them to, make that not a possibility. But yeah, even big companies will do the same thing, or an administrator will leave and they forget to turn off the account.
What is the second one that you have?
Second one is one that we do a lot of. You and I, strengthening endpoint and network security. So you want to make sure that your endpoints, workstations, servers, laptops, mobile devices, are strengthened. They have, good endpoint response and detection software on them. You're using good firewalls, good intrusion detection methods. And of course, my favorite thing is, even though it's not 100% infallible now, making sure you have multi-factor on everything, because it will still stop 99.9% of all the breaches that are occurring. It's just a few that still manage to slip by.
And it's funny, we meet people all the time that comes. I'm talking to a company right now, 10 minutes from our office, found us. They're a small company. They're using the one-man band. And as soon as they told me that the guy was charging them $90 an hour for support, I'm like, oh, this should be interesting. Because nobody can, that was like a rate from 20 years ago. So I'm like, oh, you're dealing with somebody who's clueless. I mean, it's just the truth. So I asked about their cybersecurity, and they're like, they don't know the answer. They're just like, maybe we don't know if he's doing it or not. But I said, what are you doing for antivirus, for endpoint protection? And they did know, and I forget what they were doing, but it was a shitty product. Like as soon as they said it, I'm like, oh, you guys are like asking for trouble. But they did it because it was really inexpensive. And I'm like, for $5 a month per machine more, you could have something 10 times better. And they're like, well, nobody ever told us. And it goes back to like, somebody has to be taking ownership and accountability. And it goes back to doing an assessment. You really should do an assessment every year. Even if you have in-house IT or you have a third-party company, you should have another company that's doing an IT and cyber assessment every year to check on the people that are in charge of your security.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that way your security and IT company aren't grading their own homework, which is a big thing that happens a lot.
So that's two. So, and these are things that insurance companies look for, and you need for your insurance policy. What's number three?
Number three, I think, is probably the biggest one. Regular employee training. Human error leading cause of breaches still to this day. Making sure you're doing regular cybersecurity awareness training, phishing simulations using products like KnowBe4, and providing clear guidance to users on security threats and how to securely use your systems.
Hang on a second. Let me get rid of this. It's so interesting that we still have people with the employee training. You're right. This is the number one biggest risk. It's always the same stat that goes up and down, but somewhere between 95, 96, 97% of the breaches that happen because somebody did something they shouldn't have done. And the craziest thing is, when we recommend to people, we use KnowBe4 for phishing awareness and training, and there's a lot more training than just phishing.
Right.
We get more pushback on that than any other product. Because people are like, oh, that's just a training thing. We don't need it. And I was like, my God, what I have to go through to help people come to their own conclusion that it's the most important thing you could do, because they'll have it, even if they have it and they have it running for 6 months, and we start sending reports showing nobody's failing, they'll say, turn it off. I'm like, no, you got where you want to be. Now we make it even harder. Like, you don't turn it off.
Right.
It's like, oh, you're in first place. Like, I don't know, NBA, you're in first place. Should you stop practicing?
Right. Yeah.
It's like,
you got to keep it going.
Mindset that's rooted in ultimately not wanting to spend money.
Right.
That's where it always comes from. Or it's not going to happen to us. Right. So here, we can always go back to, where's that one? Do I have that? I don't think I have. It's not going to happen to us. I don't know. I thought I had it. Solution has been. No, I don't have that one. But it is going to happen to you. It's 100% guaranteed. Here, right here. Bing. It's 100% guaranteed you're going to have a breach. It is going to happen to you. And it's probably going to be because of somebody that did something. The breach that you and I keep getting alerted on right now, both our teams are working on it. Somebody did something. What did they do?
We don't know yet, but somebody clicked on something and more than likely gave their credentials in a phishing attack.
But it was a person. It was a human being.
Yep.
Right? Now, we have alerting in place, so we knew about it within 60 seconds. We got in, changed passwords, locked it down, no damage.
Right.
Okay, because it happened. This client of ours happens to have taken the advice, and they put every tool in place that we need to be alerted, and including the phishing email training. But to the point of this, regular employee training doesn't mean once a month have a meeting where nobody's paying attention. Doesn't mean once a quarter. It doesn't mean anything that equates to doing the least amount of possible training you can. It's the opposite. You want to train as much as you can, and the best thing to do is put a phishing email phishing awareness simulation training module in place, crank it up, and never turn it off.
Right.
And that's really that's just one part of training, but that's pretty much the biggest training we need to give people, and never stop.
Yeah, and if you do stop, then you're just going to get right back to where you were, and people are going to start clicking on things. They're not going to be, with AI and other tools, the phishing attacks and other things are getting harder to decipher. So you need to keep your team and people updated on what current attacks look like.
Okay. Number 4. What do you got for number 4?
Number 4 is a great one that I think would have solved a lot of issues a few months ago, but maintain a resilient backup and recovery plan. So just backing up your data is not necessarily good enough, because just because you backed it up doesn't mean you can restore. Also doesn't mean people can't get to it. So you definitely want to have a backup plan that has some offsite backup. Backups are what are called immutable, so they can't be deleted. And you really want to make sure you test that process, because the worst thing you can have happen is you get ransomed and you go to restore your backups and they're all full of errors and won't restore.
Yeah. And we had a breach where we had a client who we do give advice, and if a client doesn't take our advice, we can't force them to do something. But we did have a client that didn't take all the advice. They did not want to budget for more cybersecurity, proactive strengthening measures, and they had a breach. And the breach was because of a person. It was we think it was a phishing email, or somebody did something. I forget what it was. But in the meantime, they got in and they deleted all the backups. Right now, we had provided them a solution many times over the years, and they declined it over and over and over. Now they're doing it.
Yes, of course.
But I forget how long they were down for like a week.
Wednesday to Tuesday or something. Yeah, it was like about a week, because we had to get them up before Labor Day.
And then when we got them back up, there was all kinds of problems getting the software up and running again, because they had a really bad breach. Third-party software took days to get that figured out and fixed. And they turned to us. They're like, "We thought you were doing stuff." We're like, "Well, we're doing what you approved, but we're not doing what you declined 5 times."
Right.
And of course, we say to them like that, but we had to dig up old emails and old proposals and show that they declined them. And it's this thing right here. Okay, there's 100% guarantee you're going to have a breach. Use common sense. And this is a solution. A solution is better. Oh, what the heck? I got to put that into English. Let me fix that.
Solution
is better. Is a better choice. Wait. Oh, I see what I mean. Okay. So what this is supposed to say is the solution is making better choices and having a belief that it can and will happen to you. That doesn't sound like that the way I wrote it, but that's really what this means. And that's what this comes down to. So your backups are critical. You got to have resilient backups. Insurance companies want to see it. They want to know what your backup plan is, and they want you to sign off on it. And if your IT company is signing off on these things and they actually aren't sure if they're in place or they're not in place the way that they say, their IT company is going to be on the hook too. They got some risk because they're signing off on something that isn't true.
Yep.
Okay. What's number 5?
Number 5 is something we do a lot of, especially with you. Vulnerability management. It's not just a one-time thing. We know Microsoft releases updates pretty much monthly on Patch Tuesday. But then there's the hundreds of pieces of software that you're running on your network, from Adobe to Chrome to WebEx, that, you know, threat actors love to find vulnerabilities in them and use them to get into your network. So, you know, not just patching your Windows devices, but making sure that all the software is currently up to date, constantly up to date, having a plan for it, and having something that, you know, it used to be in the day you would run vulnerability assessments quarterly or once or twice a year. We now run them daily. It's just a new thing that we moved into, which is, you know, continuous vulnerability monitoring. And it's the only way you got to go in the future, because vulnerability.
And the insurance companies, this is one of the top things that you look at those questionnaires. What are you doing for vulnerability management, pen testing? And like you said, we used to do it. It was once a month or something, but whatever it is, now it's real time.
We used to do them yearly with most people, but now, you know, it's one every day, and then, you know, anything critical gets fixed right away, and then everything else gets reported out.
And these things are not expensive, by the way. Like, if you don't have these things in place, you need to understand that they're not expensive relative to the cost of a breach, or even relative to just budgeting for them. You know, you hear all these things that are in a list of things you need to do, but once you budget for them, they just become part of your normal budget, and you get used to it. But they're not big ticket items. It's really more correlated to how many people you have. So the bigger the company, the more it costs. But relative to the potential damage you could spend, I mean, it could cost you so much money to be breached. It's not even a thought to not put these things in place.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before, but we have one person that we've worked with on you that has spent more money in breach response than they would have spent in 2 years of monitoring.
Yeah, and by the way, 2 days ago, they just approved everything finally after 3 years.
Oh, nice.
3 years and 3 breaches, they finally gave us the approval.
Nice.
All right, last one, number 6.
This is my favorite thing to do. Develop and test incident response plans. You need to have a detailed incident response plan for when something does happen, and you need ways to test them. We usually use what's called tabletop exercises, where we will simulate a breach, and then we'll go through the plan. The plan needs to, you know who you have to call, what resources you have, you know, what are you going to use a secondary location, you know, do you have backup? So have as much detail as you can get to an incident response plan. Test it will save you. Oh, and also, don't keep that response plan on a computer somewhere. Make sure it's printed out so somebody can get to it.
And you got it. And inside that plan, well, before I get into that, insurance companies want to know that you have an incident response plan. They want to know that you have a disaster recovery plan. Those are not even. I don't think you'll even get approved for. Well, maybe you'll get approved for a policy, but I can't imagine how much more the premium would be if you don't have those things, or that they even would give it to you without those things. But the incident response plan identifies who the key players are, what the workflow, what the process is going to be when there's a breach. We have our workflow, you know, and internally, like you had something you guys detected a little while ago. Immediately, you know, we pulled out the playbook, followed it. The response is happening now. They're going to be locked down, passwords changed, and we just run the playbook. But the client, like, if you're watching this and you don't know if you have an incident response plan, you need to find out. And if you don't, you can reach out to us. So let me get to this. You can reach out to us.
And in that plan, you'll need to know, like, you know, who's your internet provider, who are your resources for IT, you know, what managers need to be called, and who are your key stakeholders. Just as much information as you can put in there as possible.
And then you have to run through that. And everybody who's in there needs to know that, hey, when there's a breach, this is what we do. And even for us, like, we have to know who the key stakeholder is that we're going to deal with, you know, in your company, so that when there's a breach, we can contact you. We can start the ball rolling with resetting your, you know, forcing everybody's logouts, forcing everybody's password resets, and all that good stuff. So,
and then if you think about, like, disaster recovery, you know, I don't think businesses in California expected yesterday that they'd be being burned out, but, you know, things happen suddenly that aren't necessarily IT related, but having that disaster recovery plan, you know, can potentially keep your working.
Even like we're in multiple locations, but what's basically become our main office is Florida, South Florida, and we have storms all summer long that knock power out, constantly knock power out, constantly knock servers out, constantly blowing electrical components up, and we have clients that go down. And if we try to convince them to move to the cloud, and most people have followed, but we still have some clients that don't listen. And they're willing to take the risk of going down 15 times over the summer, you know, and
It's crazy.
Well, what's your plan? What's your plan to get back up and running? What's the incident response plan? And if you're up in the Northeast, like right now, I think there's some snow happening or whatever. But what are you going to do when there's a snowstorm? What are you going to do when the ice on the what do you call it, on the wires on the telephone poles gets so heavy that it takes the wires down and power goes out? That happens all the time up in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, in the Northeast, all the time in the middle of the winter. So these are things you got to think about. These are things insurance companies want to know because they don't want to take on your risk if you haven't done everything you possibly can to mitigate and reduce your risk. You're going to pay more for the insurance, or you're going to be denied altogether, and you can't afford to not have a cybersecurity policy because you're going to need it.
And gone are the days of insurance companies just giving you a policy without any kind of validation or verification.
Yeah, you're not getting that no. What is it? They used to call them no doc mortgages. Like, oh yeah, just give me a mortgage. Yeah, we saw how that ended.
No.
So those are the top 6 things, and when we put this out online, we'll list those in the description. And these are great. These are 6 really good things. But the most important thing goes one level above that. And this is why I put our phone number and I always put our email address up here. You need a strategic partner that knows what they're doing, that has proven success, that's been through many, many, many breaches, understands not only how to respond, but how to avoid them, and can guide you. So, we have the guidance, knowledge, and we have the knowledge and experience to guide you. And so we share this information so that it inspires you to think. But at the same time, we're also here as a resource for you. So I definitely encourage you to reach out to us. You can do this free assessment. Let me go back to that real quick.
Yep. Free assessments where everyone should start in January.
Oh no, did I delete it? I think I might have deleted it by mistake. Busy deleting things here. I think I deleted it. Oh shoot, I did delete it. I got to get it back. Well, I can't put it up here because I deleted it. But I did put it up here earlier, so just rewind. But that free assessment, it touches on all these things, and it really will tell you where you stand. And if you're a business owner, if you're a decision maker, if in any way if you're a CFO, if in any way you're involved with the risk in your company, reach out to us. And it doesn't cost you anything to pick up the phone and ask us questions. We don't charge for that. And you may find that you just really enjoy working with us, and you may want to have us as a third party to help you make sure that everything is in alignment. And that's what we're here for. All right, so Matt, good one. We'll do it again next week.
Yep. Sounds good.
This is valuable to everybody who watches it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm starting to get some comments from people saying they're enjoying the videos when we put them out online. And no one